So everybody knows 4th of July. 4th of July weekend is always a big weekend for things like camping, boating, fishing.
Mm-hmm.
So north of Columbus, we have Alum Creek, which is a big lake as well as a state park. And on the 4th of July in the evening, they being law enforcement, believe that they found a body in this state park area. So the way that this goes down is at 6:30 p.m. Thursday, July 4th, an officer with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources was on foot patrol when she observed, what appeared to be a shallow grave near the pull-off area in the 640 block of State Route 37 near Alum Creek State Park.
Well, not to cut you off, but we have a big celebration, one of the biggest in the country, called Red, White, and Boom, which normally happens July 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming it happened on July 3rd. Again, I haven't gone to it in years. But
yeah. I think it's every year on July 3rd.
So yes, there's family celebrations and stuff like that. But as far as Columbus, Ohio, or this area is concerned, the big fireworks is normally on the 3rd, and that's like downtown, hundreds of thousands of people. And then normally the suburbs of Columbus will have like local fireworks around the 4th.
Mm-hmm. Well, this turns out to be, it was on Friday, the next day, that they identified the victim, and her name was Brittany McDowell.
Mm-hmm.
She was a resident on the west side of Columbus. According to her last address listed,
right,
was in West Columbus, and her relatives say that they had not seen her for a while. Now, I don't know what that means, because that doesn't give us much of a time frame there.
No.
But what investigators are saying is they do not know how McDowell died, but said that the injuries she had led them to consider this a murder. So now they're moving forward with a homicide investigation. They wouldn't comment on her injuries as to what they were.
28-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so that it's going to go to the coroner's office, and then they should be coming out with some kind of report after that.
Yeah. So where the body was placed, and just the placement of the body itself, even when we talk about her injuries, and clearly there's something that shows them that this is in fact a homicide rather than something else. But yeah, just concealing the body in that way, driving, just the distance from that location to her home, and then now you're inside the woods a little bit, and you're buried in a shallow grave. I mean, those things not only point to homicide, but to me also kind of point to somebody went to a lot of effort to try to conceal this body. Thankfully, they were unsuccessful. And usually what we found when we talk about cases similar to this is that this would be somebody, the likely perpetrator would be somebody fairly close to her, somebody on her inner circle, somebody that wanted to go to great lengths to conceal the body because we need a situation where she is not found, where she is just a missing person, or somebody could believe, or relatives could possibly believe, that maybe she just took off. So I think the weird thing for me here, though, is on my way in this morning, I actually drove by the location, the general location. I didn't get out and try to tromp through the woods or anything, but
well, I guess it would be a spot that was used by a lot of fishermen. So I wonder, I'm not questioning the officer, but where I live, there's a park, and there's a lot of these pull-off service roads that people will use to park their car and then go fishing or whatever. And so I just wonder, was there a reason that the cop was out there? Did somebody tip him off?
Well, it wasn't a cop. It was a...
did I mishear you?
Yeah, so it's actually somebody that's part of their job description is to walk these areas. So it was an officer. That's where it gets confusing.
Okay.
But it was an officer with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources who was out on foot patrol. Now, this area in particular, the reason why you would have an officer from the Natural Resources Department out there is there's all kinds of illegal activity that could happen or take place in these areas. But then on top of that, it's as simple too as checking fishermen do they have their fisher's license?
Right.
Are they carrying the proper license? Sometimes people go out
Do you have your fisher license?
So
your fisher license.
Well, whatever it's called. It's actually called something. I used to purchase one every year, but haven't done so in a while. But you also have people that this is a little more rare, but it does occur that people will go out there and illegally hunt.
Yeah.
And so you got to protect these areas. And then on top of that, with it being by the lake, so where her body was found is near the bridge that goes over the lake. There's two or three. I think there's 3 bridges that go over the lake. And this one would be the northernmost one, I believe. And you have a situation out in that area too, where people that are out there partying or people just out having a good time will jump off the bridge or off of the little cliffs and the rocks there into the water, which they do not want people to do in that area. And I know this to be true with most bodies of water where people go to party and hang out and just have a good time. On occasion, you'll see like a little cross somewhere, and it typically would be on a bridge or on one of these little cliffs. And that's where somebody who thought they were out having a good time was going to jump in the water from that spot and had a terrible accident and didn't survive the jump. So this is just an officer out doing their thing, doing their job, finds this to what must have looked obviously to the officer that it was in fact a shallow grave, because the report is that then this officer decided to feel around in the area to make sure that they weren't just calling in something bogus. They originally thought, because it's more probable, that it would have been the grave of an animal. And so they phoned it in, and kudos to all of our good, smart people here in Ohio, because the team that actually dug up the body was our Bureau of Criminal Investigation. So they got the right people out there. This is an attempt to keep the scene clean and preserve the scene and try to collect any evidence that may have been left behind during the course of trying to conceal the body. It's all still new here. I mean, we're talking about the body was found on the 4th and identification wasn't made until the 5th. And I don't know how far this investigation will have to go before they talk to the person or persons responsible. I personally feel this is somebody on the inner circle of this young woman. And we also have a situation too where it does not appear, or at least nobody's stating as such, that she was ever reported missing. Again, we do not know how long.
She's 28. Seems like she still lived with her grandmother.
She was living with some relatives.
Yeah, so she was raised by her grandmother, and her grandmother says that she just kind of got into was falling into a bad lifestyle. And that's coming from her grandmother. And she said that she's going to miss her. She always knew that I loved her, and she'd always tell me when she left, "I love you, Grandma." So what's so sad about some of these is, again, once somebody says bad lifestyle, we don't know exactly what that means. But that normally pulls attention away from cases like this. And the fact of the matter is, here's a 28-year-old that had a lot of life to live, and maybe some bad choices were being made, but that's a lot of time to correct those choices. And that's cut short, and that opportunity is cut short by something.
Now, you can get to Delaware from Columbus, any number of ways. But do you think so? So her body was found near the Route 37.
Yeah.
And I know that's a route that you've traveled several times, because I've got to believe that most people going from Columbus up to that area or to the Delaware area.
That's right off of 71, right?
Right. That's what I'm getting at, that they would take 71 north and then get off on the 37 exit. So.
Yeah, my guess is she wasn't even hanging around there.
Right.
That to me, this seems like
maybe something happened
somewhere
elsewhere.
And hey, let's go up to Delaware. There,
Or maybe not even let's go to Delaware. Let's get in the car and drive to a spot that, just keep driving until we're out of the city. And then we think we're far enough out of the city. Let's go somewhere where we think that nobody's going to be looking for anything.
Right.
But the unique thing to me about this is, if in fact the person that tried to conceal her body, if they did go up 71 north, again, that's the route that I would argue that most people would think to take. They would have had to turn around to get to this actual pull off here, because it's not like a 2-lane road, one going east, one going west. This is separated.
Mm-hmm.
We got lanes going, 2 lanes going west, 2 lanes going east. So this person, if they went up to 71 north, they would have made a left heading west on 37, and then at some point turned around to head back east.
Right.
And get off on you could pull off. I'm a little familiar with this area because I've drove past this spot countless numbers of times, and you can see there's a little pull off, and it's not uncommon to see a car pulled off there where somebody has parked their vehicle, their truck or whatever, and they've walked a bit of ways down to the lake so they can go fishing.
Right.
And so this person would have had to have pulled off, and then there's a trail there. And I can't, from the crime scene, well, this isn't crime scene photos. This is the news station photos of the outside of the crime scene area. But if I, in fact, have the right spot, one thing you can see from the road immediately there is there's like an orange sign held up by some wooden post. And I've seen a lot of people that will tromp back through there. Right near that sign, there's a trailhead. And it's not like an official state park trail. It looks to me to be more of people have trampled over that area for years to get down to the lake from there, because it's kind of the quickest spot from the parking area. And so it looks to me like somebody just went in there with the body and then buried it off of that trail there. So the person, I mean, it just, the only thing that makes sense is that the body was transported by car. I know we keep referencing the lake in Alum Creek there, but it would be much more difficult to try to move this by boat and then get up into that area.
Yeah, unless they're partying. I mean, look, they find the body. Again, the autopsy is going to tell us a lot of things. I mean, the rigor mortis, how long do they think that she was there for? Because it's not impossible that she was partying on a boat with somebody. Was there an accident on the boat? Was there an accident with these quote-unquote bad lifestyle decisions? It's hard to say. I think the issue becomes...
Well, but I think the injuries to the body, we're treating this as a homicide, is telling in itself.
No, I agree. But again, that's a pretty vague statement, right? There's some injuries, so we're going to treat this as a homicide.
Well,
that doesn't mean that they're not going to come out and say, well, we actually think those injuries happen post-mortem or whatever, right? So we're just going to find out more about this. But again, with the quote-unquote bad lifestyle choices, is this going to be something that they actually highlight within the news stories? Or is it just going to kind of be swept under the rug? I think the difficult thing for law enforcement is whether boat or car, and I I agree with you, and you know that area way better than I do. But I agree with you that chances are, right? Car, right?
Well,
so seems to make more sense.
Well, and I say that for a whole bunch of reasons. One, to carry something of that weight to get to that area from a boat would be extremely. It's already going to be difficult to do it from a car,
right?
But it would be 10 times more difficult to do it from a boat. There's not great spots over there to dock the boat either.
Right.
And then on top of that, those waters are patrolled better than the roads in that area.
Yeah.
And we're talking about there are people that live in that area that used to own boats or will never own boats going forward because the water's just too busy. There's too many people on the water all the time. So I would guess that somebody drove up there probably under the cover of night, was looking for what they thought to be a good spot. Who knows? Maybe they knew this area for some reason.
Right, and that's why I brought up this big shindig on the 3rd, because whatever happens on the 3rd, happens at night. The body's not found until, the early evenings of the next day. You see what I mean? Like, she's 28 years old. Was she partying with some people? How many days was she missing from? And then you think cell phone records would at some point, and they don't say if she was found with any cell phone records, but if the family can get the cell phone records, then you might know who she was trying to hang out with on the 3rd. And did that have anything to do with...
Or she was even alive on the 3rd.
Right, agree. Yeah, I mean, because again, we also don't know how long she was missing, because when people say, well, I haven't seen them in a while, that's 2 days.
It's also surprising to me, not just for the turnaround purposes of having to turn the vehicle around when you're traveling that direction, and then to access this pull-off area. That is a little surprising. When I saw it on the news to begin with, I actually thought it was on the other side of the road because it would take less effort to get there.
Right.
But the other thing that was surprising to me too is that portion, especially that portion of that road, of that state route. Mm-hmm. There's almost always, I can't think of one time that I drove past there and there wasn't a highway patrol car just chilling on one side or the other of the road, because that's one of those spots, Captain, where, the speed limit drops down from 65 to 35.
Yeah.
In a fairly short range. And so that's a great spot to catch people speeding, because a lot of people go, it seems like a country road. I was going 65 a few minutes ago. I'll just keep going 65. So, yeah, that's a surprising location for a number of reasons.
But I think the other difficult thing here with law enforcement is going to be that, like I said, we have these big events, hundreds of thousands of people coming into town on July 3rd. So people from all over the state. So not saying that she was, but that could put her hanging out with people that aren't super close to her inner circle. You know what I mean? Cousins come to visit. Next thing you know, you're hanging out with your group has grown a little bit larger, and you don't know some of the people. So I think that makes a little bit more difficult for law enforcement being on the 3rd and finding her on the 4th. But I also think it makes it more challenging, whether it's travel by boat or travel by car, where both of us believe that the crime probably didn't happen there, and they never said that there's evidence that the crime happened where this shallow grave was. But then it becomes, the locals that might see something suspicious, you're probably not going to take notice so much on the 3rd or the 4th, because you got a lot more people traveling on those roads and a lot more people out of town visiting family. See what I mean? So I just think that becomes a battle that law enforcement is going to have to face. Stop the presses. How did Unsolved Mysteries used to do that?
They did the update.
And then the music, and you'd get all excited, like, oh, because sometimes the updates were about cases that they were currently covering. Like, you just watched Missing Kid.
Yeah.
Boom, update. And then it'd be like, we found the missing kid. And you're like, oh, but sometimes it'd be like, boom, update. And it'd be about some episode 2 years ago.
Right. And I'm guessing that a lot of that was because they're filming these things way in advance and determining what cases are on what episode way in advance. And if something takes place between the production of that episode and the release of it, they're able to quickly update it. So we're kind of doing that today. What you just heard is a conversation that the captain and I had a week ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when this case was very new, and there's just been 1 week since that conversation, and there's been some big updates. So there was an arrest made. They arrested John Bartholomew, age 24.
I guess he was a pretty good kid, though.
Yeah, he had no criminal record, according to the local Channel 6 news here.
Right.
Now, this is still in the very early stages, so more could come out, and they could be wrong about some of this information. But basically what they are saying is, and that's all we have is the very basics, because last I saw, John was not required to enter a plea, but he was brought before a judge or brought to a court appearance anyway. And this court appearance took place, he was via video from the jail, and he is being held on $1.5 million bond for the death of Brittany McDowell. And as we said, her body was discovered on July 4th at a state park here in Ohio. You can't really gain anything from his court appearance because there wasn't really anything needed to be said on his behalf, since he wasn't required to enter a plea at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But he is charged with murder, tampering with evidence, and abuse of a corpse. And then there is a probable cause affidavit, which if you read that, it shines some light on what actually took place or what they believe to have taken place. Bartholomew told investigators that he picked up Brittany McDowell on Sullivan Avenue and paid her $60 for sex. And apparently after sex, she demanded more money from him. This caused an argument, and at some point he decides to win the argument or lose the argument or just be a total asshole, and he shot her once. This is with a .22 caliber handgun, but then he shoots her again a second time with a 9mm firearm. So he's wherever they were. This affidavit doesn't really say where this murder took place, but wherever that argument occurred, he has 2 loaded firearms on his person or near him, and he shoots her twice, once each time with a different gun. Now, apparently the way that this guy got busted, he told his father, so there was like blood in his car. So the murder may have taken place in the vehicle.
Yeah.
But we know that even if it didn't, he transported her body miles and miles and miles away and buried her in a shallow grave up at the state park. So he tells his father that he had left a dead squirrel in the back of his car. So Bartholomew's father hires a cleaning company to clean the vehicle, get rid of the blood. So the cleaning company shows up and they see the blood in this dude's car. They don't clean the car. They call Delaware County Sheriff's Office and report the vehicle to them.
Good for them.
Yeah, so this led them to him. He's 24 years old.
Because I don't think it seems like a situation where the dad was trying to cover this up.
No, I think the father just didn't have any clue what was actually going on. And he even says to the news, he's like, look, we were super blindsided by this whole thing and even more floored that their son admitted to this. This is not something that they expected or ever thought would be.
Right. And who knows how much blood was actually in the car, and he might have just saw a little blood, and then when the crew came to clean it up, they went, whoa, what happened here?
Well, he says his son is, he stood up for him saying that, look, he's got no prior record, and I always thought he was a good kid. He was going to college. Oh, he graduated last December from Columbus State Community College with an associate's degree. But he did say in the last few months his son was behaving differently and was not really very social the last few months. And so this is what I wonder about here, because I've often thought that if you are hiring a working girl, whatever you want to call it, there's many different terms. Some of them are less flattering than others.
A sex worker.
Right. So I've always thought that could be a dark place for some people. Not everybody, not all the time, but you have to wonder what's going on inside this individual that they're choosing to have a relationship this way. If you want to call it that. This is what they're choosing to go out and do rather than what most other people would do with meeting people in public places and there's a million different ways to meet your significant other. This paying for $60 for sex. Remember, I said just last week when we were talking about this, I wouldn't be surprised if this was somebody close to the victim, and I thought it would be solved very quickly. I was right that it looks like it's going to be solved quickly, but it doesn't appear that this man, John Bartholomew, age 24, that he was a part of her social circle.
Yeah, but it also didn't look like there was any knowledge by her family that she was or had become a sex worker.
Well, she'd been charged with soliciting in the past.
Did she? I didn't know that.
And I don't think I got into that when you and I had our first conversation, because she also had some drug charges. I can't talk today.
Drank too much.
But sometimes you can get when they don't clarify what the soliciting charge is for, it gets a little difficult, because you can get charged for soliciting drugs.
Right.
So I didn't want to jump to any conclusions in my own mind that it was for sex work or prostitution or whatever. Right. And so it seems like that's probably the situation. They may not have been aware of this, but the other thing that I wonder about here is I don't think I'm entirely wrong on saying that this guy might have been on her social circle, one of her social circles. And what I mean by that is there's a chance he could have been a repeat John. Well, right. I can't call him John. That's what his damn name is. But
he was a repeat John.
Yeah.
And every day he was a John.
No, but this just makes you wonder a couple of things here. So
every day I'm hustling.
It seems to me very strange that the result is to murder her over this argument. I almost wonder if there's something else going on there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it could be drug related on John's end. It could be it could be some kind of mental break that he was having.
But you very easily could have, let's say this argument takes place, or she is demanding more money or whatever. I don't want to say that that's the facts of the case. That's what he says. That's what the murderer says is his side of the story.
Right.
I don't know. I'm choosing not to believe.
Well, he also claims that, she demanded more money and then she threatened him with a taser. Now, if that's true, if she was found with a taser, or they found a taser in his car, maybe that story is a little more true.
That makes more sense, because the story I got was shorter than that, briefer than that, and I was thinking, I'm like, there has to be something else going on, because if she's demanding more money for sex and that part's all over with,
right,
paid for, all whatever, it's very easy to just go, get the hell out of my car, or flee from that person, right?
Yeah.
The murder seemed like a big jump, but I guess, yeah, if in fact she was threatening him.
John looks very young.
He does. It makes me feel old. This dude's 24, and I looked at him, I'm like, this dude's a kid.
He looks like a middle schooler, and he's wearing, you see that turtle suit he has.
Yeah.
That is the Suicide Watch turtle suit. That was back when I told you they put me in a turtle suit. That's what it looks like.
Well, so what I think is going to happen here is I don't think we're going to get what may be the real story unless they make him, because I have to believe if he's already told investigators what they wanted to hear, that he would be willing to plead guilty if, in fact, the prosecutor will allow him to do so and have some type of plea agreement.
They're not going to give him like self-defense or anything, though.
No. But what I mean is sometimes in a plea agreement, part of the plea agreement is to sign a sworn statement of the actual events of everything that took place.
Well,
and unless they do that, we may never know more of the story if there is, in fact, more to the story.
Tell me if you agree or disagree, but I'm going to lean on the side that John is actually telling the truth, that he was threatened with a taser. And the reason why I'm going to lean to that being true is that if you are trying to make your crime seem less or possibly get charged with something less, say she threatened you with a gun, say she threatened you with a knife. Now it's self-defense, taser.
Mm-hmm.
No, that'd be like him saying, well, she threatened me with pepper spray and a taser.
Mm-hmm.
So I lean to that possibly being more true. And I actually lean to the fact that I think if what his parents are saying is correct, this kid has gone through something that does not make the murder right at all.
Mm-mm.
He stopped the potential of Brittany. Look, everybody in her family said that she was going through some stuff, but that doesn't mean she wasn't going to get out of it. And that doesn't mean that she wasn't going to live a beautiful life. He stopped that opportunity. Horrible person. But if he was just a horrible person during this time and wasn't beforehand and maybe is not going to be after, and if what his parents are saying is correct, we have at least a chance of John saying, look, this is what happened. Whether people believe him fully or not, obviously he didn't go to his parents and confess, or he didn't go to the police and confess.
Right. He tried to cover it up.
Right. But there's a lot of times where people have done really bad things. When they get caught, they go, here, let me tell you everything. And I will do whatever time I have to do.
Well, I mean, he's, yeah, okay, so he tells investigators what happened, but he's kind of already fucked at that point, right? I mean, her blood's in his car. They found her body. This would be a whole different story if they would have found her body 2 months later.
Right.
This whole connection of the blood in the car may have never been connected or reported.
Right.
So this is one of those things. I think what will probably happen here, if the prosecutors are willing to work with him, and if he is willing to talk and say everything that his side of the story or whatever you want to call it, I think what will probably happen is he'll still get the murder charge, and they'll probably drop these lesser charges as a way to wheel and deal with him without giving up too much. We'll drop the tampering with evidence, we'll drop the abuse of a corpse, and you'll get the murder charge, probably 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not get life on this, but he's probably going to get 20-some years before they even consider him for parole.
Yeah, I do like the fact that they set the bond so high. I think that's a good thing. $1.5 million is pretty high in the state of Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully they take this case very serious, because I I was trying to find the other case of the girl that was found in a park to see what his bond was set at. I just hope that the court system doesn't take this lightly, because Brittany was going through something and was not in a great place in her life.
Oh, I don't think they will. I think this $1.5 million bond points out that the prosecutor's office is taking this very seriously, as they should.